The Vikings followed more than just the call of battle. Behind their raids and voyages stood a quiet code, a set of ideals drawn from their old faith of Asatru and the wisdom of the Havamal. These 9 noble virtues were not strict rules, but guiding principles that shaped how a true warrior lived, fought, and earned honor. Each virtue told the world who the Vikings were and why their legacy still inspires us today. Courage was the first test of character and the key to every other virtue. It was not only the roar of warriors charging with axes raised, but the steady resolve to face danger, hardship, and fate without flinching. The very word comes from the Latin cor, meaning heart, and the Vikings believed true bravery lived there, in a person's will to act despite fear. History offers vivid proof. When Eric the Red was banished from Iceland around 982 CE for killings during a feud, he did not hide or surrender. Instead, he sailed west into uncharted seas and discovered Greenland, leading settlers to a land few believed existed. That voyage was as much an act of mental strength as of seamanship. In 865 CE, the Great Heathen Army crossed the North Sea to challenge Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. Their leaders knew they faced fortified towns and seasoned armies, yet they advanced, showing the quiet confidence that defined Norse courage. This bravery was not blind recklessness. Viking captains planned raids with care, reading tides and stars, waiting for the right season to strike. Courage meant clear judgment in the face of risk, the wisdom to stand firm without throwing away lives. Women showed the same spirit. The saga of Odd the Deep-Minded tells of a widow who led her entire household across the Atlantic after her husband's death, steering her own ship to a new settlement in Iceland. Courage also appeared in everyday life. Farmers enduring brutal winters, traders pushing into unknown markets, and explorers steering longships toward the edge of the map all faced dangers that demanded a strong heart. For the Norse, fear itself was no shame, yielding to it was. Their sagas praised those who kept a calm mind when storms rose or when enemies gathered at the door. Without this steadfast bravery, none of the other noble virtues, truth, honor, fidelity, or perseverance could stand. Courage was the spark that allowed Vikings to defend their beliefs, protect their kin, and carve their names into history long after the clash of swords had faded. Truth was not a polite custom, but the foundation of survival. A man's word carried the same weight as steel, and one broken oath could ignite a blood feud lasting generations. The Havamal warns, swear no oath but what you mean to abide by, and history shows why that warning mattered. In the 10th century, Iceland's Althing, the oldest surviving parliament, settled disputes largely on spoken testimony. Without honest witnesses, no judgment could stand. Trade stretched from the fjords of Norway to the markets of Constantinople. Merchants relied on reputation more than contracts. Arab chronicler Ibn Fadlan recorded how Norse traders on the Volga River swore by their gods before deals, believing a false promise invited both human vengeance and divine punishment. One dishonest weight on a scale could close every port to a trader's ship. Truth also demanded a clear-eyed view of reality. Farmers reading dark skies and fishermen steering through sudden squalls could not afford comforting lies. A chieftain who misjudged a rival's strength risked his people's lives. Honesty, in this sense, meant seeing the world as it was, not as one wished it to be. The sagas celebrate those who spoke hard truths to power. In Egil's saga, the poet-warrior Egil Skallagrimsson openly recited verses that shamed King Eirik Bloodaxe, knowing it could cost him his head. His fearless words won respect and even a royal pardon, proving that blunt honesty could diffuse violence when carefully wielded. Truth was action as much as speech. Oaths were taken beside sacred stones or on the hilt of a sword, and breaking them marked a person as a Nightingale, a coward beyond redemption. In a world without written law, truth bound communities together more tightly than walls or weapons. And those who upheld it ensured their names would endure in story long after their ships turned to dust. Honor was the invisible armor every man and woman carried. It decided who gained allies, who commanded warriors, and whose name would be sung in future sagas. A person's word was binding in a land where written law was rare, and a single betrayal could spark generations of blood feuds. One striking example comes from the saga of Njal's burning in Iceland. Around the year 1011, Njal Thorgeirsson refused to break his oath even when surrounded by enemies who set his home ablaze. He chose to face death rather than live with dishonor, and his steadfastness became a legend across the north. Likewise, the duel between Egil Skallagrimsson and Bergenundr shows how a Viking warrior defended family reputation with skill and courage, proving that personal honor outweighed even royal favor. Honor extended beyond battlefields. Viking merchants trading in Constantinople or the markets of York relied on fair weights and honest deals. A merchant caught cheating might never trade again, because in Norse culture, a tarnished name was almost impossible to cleanse. Women, too, guarded family honor. Gudrun Osvifursdottir, a central figure in the Laxdæla saga, defended her family's rights in court and proved that a sharp mind could protect a household as surely as a sword. Keeping honor demanded careful judgment. Feuds were common, but the Viking assemblies that acted as courts, offered lawful settlements. Accepting a fair settlement could preserve dignity and prevent endless revenge. This balance of courage and restraint was the true test of character. To the Vikings, wealth could be lost in a storm, and strength could fade with age, but the memory of a life lived honorably endured in story and song. Their sagas still echo across 1,000 years, showing how a steadfast reputation could outlast kingdoms and carve a place in history that even time cannot erase. For the Norse people, fidelity meant unwavering loyalty to family, friends, and sworn allies, a commitment stronger than any law. Oaths were sacred. In a world without written contracts, a spoken promise bound a person before gods and men alike. Breaking that bond invited disgrace and often bloodshed. The Icelandic sagas recount many feuds sparked by a single broken vow, proving that loyalty was the glue that held clans together. A striking example comes from the saga of Hrafnkel Freysgodi. After swearing devotion to the god Freyr, Hrafnkel gained wealth and power. When he later abandoned his oath, misfortune followed swiftly: betrayal by allies, defeat in battle, and the loss of his holdings. To the Vikings, this was no coincidence. The gods themselves punished the faithless. Fidelity also guided acts of vengeance, which were not seen as reckless revenge, but as sacred duty. When a family member was killed, the surviving kin were expected to seek justice. The saga of the Laxdæla tells how Gudrun Osvifursdottir demanded that her sons avenge their father's death, ensuring the family's honor remained intact. Refusing such an obligation would brand a person a Nidingur, a coward without standing in society. This virtue extended beyond blood ties. Viking warbands and trading crews relied on mutual trust when crossing dangerous seas or entering foreign markets. Each member protected the others, knowing that survival depended on shared loyalty. Even women played a central role. They managed farms and wealth while men voyaged, proving their fidelity by safeguarding home and kin until their warriors returned. Fidelity was never blind obedience. Wise leaders balanced loyalty with fairness, rewarding devotion but avoiding the tyranny that breeds resentment. In every saga, those who inspired true allegiance, through courage, generosity, and justice, became the chieftains whose names endured. For the Vikings, loyalty was life itself, a sacred bond that outlasted storms, battles, and even death. Enjoying the journey through Viking history? Hit subscribe now so you never miss the next video. Discipline was the quiet strength that allowed the Vikings to hold every other virtue together. It meant self-control, careful planning, and the ability to keep a personal code even when no one was watching. In a world of sudden storms and long winters, a moment of weakness could cost a ship, a harvest, or a life. Discipline kept families fed, crews alive, and reputations clean. When Leif Erikson set sail around the year 1000 toward the unknown western lands later called Vinland, he commanded a small crew across the rough North Atlantic. Success depended on more than courage. It required strict routines for navigation, rationing supplies, and keeping morale steady through weeks of icy fog. Their safe arrival on new shores proved the value of careful order and daily restraint. At home, Icelandic farmers showed the same virtue. The Book of Settlements records how early colonists cut turf, built longhouses, and stored hay with almost military precision to survive the fierce winters. One miscounted bale of fodder could mean the loss of an entire herd. Discipline was the difference between a thriving homestead and starvation. At the annual Althing Assembly, disputes were argued under strict rules of speech and evidence. Hot tempers were common, but the law demanded that men master their anger and present their cases with measured words. Even warriors famed for ferocity in battle had to show calm control before their peers. Hospitality might seem surprising as a warrior's virtue, yet for the Vikings it was a sacred obligation. In the rugged north, where winter storms could trap travelers for days, offering shelter and food was often the difference between life and death. A guest was not just a visitor, but a test of character, and generosity towards strangers showed true strength. The Icelandic sagas record many moments where hospitality shaped fates. In the saga of Gisli, a fugitive is given refuge by friends, even when harboring him could bring vengeance from powerful enemies. Such acts were dangerous, but turning away a traveler in need would stain a family's honor. Norse myth warned that the gods themselves might walk the earth in human form. Odin, master of wisdom, was said to appear as a weary wanderer, his broad-brimmed hat hiding one eye. To mistreat a stranger risked insulting a god. Longhouses were built with this duty in mind. A central fire provided warmth, benches lined the hall, and hosts were expected to share meat, ale, and stories before asking a guest's business. Laws supported the practice. At the Althing in Iceland, disputes were sometimes settled during great feasts where rivals were treated as honored guests under the same roof. Even enemies were granted a night's protection once bread and salt had been offered. Women played a vital role in maintaining this standard. Saga heroines like Odd the Deep-Minded are praised for welcoming travelers and guiding the household's generosity. Their careful management of supplies showed that true hospitality required planning and discipline, not just a warm heart. For the Norse people, hard work was both a survival skill and a spiritual duty. In a land of long winters and brief summers, laziness could destroy a household. Industriousness meant more than simple labor. It was the habit of doing every task with skill and pride, whether forging a blade, weaving sailcloth, or navigating icy seas. Historical records and sagas show how deeply this value shaped daily life. Archaeologists in Jorvik, modern York, have uncovered Viking workshops where metalworkers, bone carvers, and weavers worked year-round, producing goods for trade across Europe. Their tools and finished pieces reveal precision and patience, proving that craftsmanship was as respected as warfare. On the farms of Iceland and Norway, families cut turf, dried fish, and stored hay with military discipline to outlast the dark months. A single mistake, miscounting fodder or failing to repair a roof, could mean starvation before spring. Industriousness also powered the great voyages. Building a longship demanded thousands of hours of coordinated effort, selecting oak, shaping planks with axes, and sealing every seam with pine tar. The famous Gokstad and Oseberg ships, discovered in Norwegian burial mounds, testify to this relentless attention to detail. Their sleek design allowed swift crossings of the North Atlantic, achievements possible only through patient, expert work. Even warriors honored this virtue. A fighter was expected to maintain weapons, mend armor, and train daily. Sagas praise men who sharpened blades before dawn or repaired shields after battle, understanding that preparation decided victory more than luck. Women displayed the same ethic by managing farms, brewing ale, and overseeing trade goods while the men voyaged. Self-reliance. To the Vikings, self-reliance was proof of strength and maturity. A person who could feed a household, defend a homestead, and guide a ship through hostile seas earned respect far more than someone who depended on others. Independence was not selfishness, but the ability to meet life's challenges without begging for rescue. The sagas give striking examples. Odd the Deep-Minded, widowed and exiled, gathered her followers and personally captained a ship from Scotland to Iceland in the late 9th century. She claimed land, divided it among her people, and founded a lasting settlement. Her courage and practical skill showed that true authority comes from the ability to act alone when circumstances demand it. Viking explorers who pushed beyond the familiar fjords had to rely on their own judgment. When Eric the Red sailed west after banishment from Iceland, there were no established routes or safe harbors. Success meant mastering navigation, reading the wind, and maintaining discipline without outside help. Their survival depended on preparation and self-confidence rather than distant aid. Even at home, self-reliance was vital. Farmers stored hay, smoked fish, and repaired buildings before winter closed the roads. A family unable to care for itself risked hunger or dependence on neighbors, which could lead to loss of freedom or forced service. Wealthy chieftains valued followers who brought their own weapons and supplies, because a warrior who needed constant support was a liability in battle. Religious practice reflected this spirit. During ceremonies, worshippers stood upright before the gods instead of kneeling. This posture symbolized partnership with the divine, not submission. It declared that humans must earn blessings through effort and worthiness, not plead for mercy. The final Viking virtue was perseverance, the grit to keep going when the sea turned black and every plan seemed doomed. For people who carved their homes from rock and ice, quitting was never an option. This determination powered their voyages, their farms, and their survival in some of the world's harshest climates. History shows it clearly. When Norse settlers reached Iceland in the late 9th century, they faced volcanic soil, bitter winds, and months of darkness. Yet families like those led by Ingolfur Arnarsson refused to retreat. They built turf houses, learned to harvest fish through frozen waters, and created a thriving society that endures to this day. A century later, Eric the Red's followers pushed farther west to Greenland. Their colony survived for hundreds of years on land where even summer nights could freeze. The greatest example may be Leif Erikson's expedition to Vinland around the year 1000. Sailing beyond every known map, his crew endured brutal storms and a winter in a strange land. They returned with stories of new continents, proving that relentless effort could open the world itself. Perseverance was not only for explorers. Farmers who lost crops to early frost replanted and tried again. Warriors wounded in battle trained through pain to stand in the shield wall once more. Women managing homesteads through endless winters kept families alive by planning and working each day, despite loneliness and danger. The sagas praise those who hold their path even when fate turns cruel. In the saga of Grettir the Strong, the outlaw hero spends years hunted across Iceland's wild interior, surviving on wits and sheer will. Though his life ends violently, his unbroken spirit becomes legend. The 9 noble virtues shaped a people who faced icy seas, endless nights, and battles against the unknown. If these timeless lessons speak to you, share which virtue inspires you most in the comments. For more journeys into Viking history and the stories behind their enduring code, remember to like this video and subscribe to the channel.